just wanna talk about some books. Hey, I just wanna talk about some books. Talk about some books. Talk about some books. Hey, I just wanna talk about some books with you.
Hey everybody, I'm Joe,
And I'm JoJo, and this is Canonical Nonsense.
and we are just two cups of Joe reading books about dragon husbandry.
Turns out that way, yeah. Today we are discussing The Summer Dragon by Todd Lockwood.
So, Todd Lockwood is probably best known for his illustrations. You may have seen them in Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering card sets. He has also done cover art for books like Legends of Drizzt, which I never read. Did you ever read those books?
Never even heard of them before this exact second.
Okay. And he also did the cover art for the Natural History of Dragons book series, which is also on our book list, but we haven't gotten to yet. And I just found that out last night. He is a pretty prolific illustrator. The Summer Dragon seems like it's a passion project for him, and it is the first book that he has written, and is the first book in what he calls the Evertide series, though this book came out in 2016 and the second one isn't out yet. So hopefully one day. He had a post on his Instagram with a sketch for the cover art for the second book, and it looked amazing. He has also published a children's book called The 12 Days of Christmas, which, a little bit of a departure from fantasy. But again, I think that was another passion project of his. So it seems like writing is more of a passion side project that he does to his main profession of illustrator.
There's a lot of illustrations of his in the book of key scenes or important imagery, and it's really lovely and helpful.
Really beautiful. Yeah, if you want to look at the illustrations, all of them are on his website, so you can see them there. And I just want to say, as a reminder to listeners before we continue, that this is a spoiler-filled podcast. So if you don't want the book spoiled for you, go read it first and then come back. So Jojo, would you recommend this book?
Oh yeah, this book fucking rocked.
Yeah, this book slapped. This was a great book.
It's not through and through a great book, but we'll talk about that. Part 1, absolute riot. Part 2, also good, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah, there was just a lull in the middle. It wasn't like anything that would make us say, "Oh, I hate this book." It seemed like there was a sidetrack there. But still a really good book. If you do want to get into the series, you have to be okay with maybe being a large wait period. This book does end on a bit of a cliffhanger is probably not the right word, but it's setting up the second book to an extent where you don't feel super fulfilled by the end of it. You feel like, yeah, I want to read the second one now.
Mostly because the first one is good. I think it ends fine.
Yeah. We end on like the end of Lord of the Rings, when it's like, yeah, that was a story that we read, but like, in the first movie, you're like, that was a satisfying movie, but oh no, they still have so far to go until they're safe again.
Yeah.
That's kind of how this book feels. So I do just want to say before we begin, one of the reasons we picked it was because we wanted to see how an illustrator approaches or does approach the written word, and like how they would describe a fantasy world. And I just wanted to ask you, Jojo, if you felt like you could feel like his illustrator background coming through in his descriptions, or if you felt like no.
Oh, I noticed more of the D&D background because there's like a couple of dungeon crawls in this book.
Yeah. There were a few moments where I was like, I wonder if he like figured out what happened by like rolling for different things.
There's definitely a couple of moments where it feels like the female lead rolled a nat 20 on an insight check and was like able to fully understand everything going around her, which I wasn't mad about. It's like
Yeah.
we get to a point where it makes sense for the reader to get some information and then we get some information. Great.
Yeah. I'll just explain it when we get to those parts. But I did feel like there were points where I was like, it's obvious that he is a very visual person, and he has this really clear vision in his head for how he wants us to see and understand the scene, and is writing it specifically so we have that very specific visual in our brains as well. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the illustrator background or just the fact that he's a good writer, but it just you could kind of understand and see parts of the world pretty clearly through the descriptions.
Yeah, it was a good book. So let's start with what this book is about. So this book begins in one of what are called aeries, which is where dragons are bred. So we have a domestic dragon breeding economy here, and it is being attacked by monsters known as the horrors. And these horrors are described as kind of zombie-like. They're undead. They have bodies that are charred black like burnt logs, so they look like they've been burnt, and there's green glowing light coming through those cracks in like their skin and their muscles. And they don't stop. They can't stop. They eat everything in front of them, and they're basically killing machines. So Graydon, who's the child, who's the son of the leader of the area, the broodmaster, is told by his father to flee and warn the other aeries.
Broodmaster means exactly what you think it is. It's the guy who runs the airy.
Yeah. he breeds the dragons.
Yep.
And he is told to warn the other aeries as he's killing the baby dragons so that the enemy can't get them, because the horrors are coming, but they're being commanded by the enemy nation that this country is at war with. And Graydon escapes on the back of a dragon. And then we cut to a different aerie, and the viewpoint changes from third to first person, and the rest of the book is basically in first person. And it is the day before Brood Day at this new aerie. And Brood Day is the day when the aerie sells the baby dragons to the dragonry. So they can't really choose to keep any of their dragons. They only are able to keep the dragons that the dragonry allows them to. And the dragonry is the like military unit that is like there's the infantry and then there's the dragonry. But they're hoping to keep 2 kits, is what they call baby dragons this year, so that they can create another breeding pair because they've had an extra large brood this year. And they want to give one of each of those dragons to their youngest children. Maia is the youngest and is our main character, and Darian is her older brother. And they seem like they're very close in age. He's just a little bit older. While they're preparing for this day, an accident happens where Fren, who is a lumber worker that supplies them with wood chips for the little brood nests, gets thrown by one of the adult dragons and is injured. And Maia gets partially blamed for this because she was distracted and runs into a lantern and kicks it over that Darian had left on the floor, which makes the adult dragon react that way. And then Jem, who is her sister-in-law, who's older, is blamed on the other, like, also partially blamed because it was her dragon who attacked Fren. He gets thrown like 20 feet in the air, but he's alive, and he's taken to what are those? What's it called? Like the temple?
Yeah, he goes to the temple.
He's taken to the temple, and there's magical healing in this. But we learn that Maia has kind of some trauma from when her mother died. So we have another dead mother.
Yeah, dead almost instantly, but not in childbirth. Everybody is not in childbirth, so it's different this time.
Which is great. She's dead, but she didn't die in childbirth. Where she keeps kind of reliving the last words that her mother said to her before she died. She says to Maia, "A dragon rider with their head in the clouds is cursed," which Maia really is frustrated and hurt by. And that was the last thing she told her before she took off on her dragon, and then was unfortunately like she was thrown off of her dragon while flying, so she fell to her death. And Maia is afraid that it was her fault because she helped prepare her mother's saddle that day. So she's afraid she didn't prepare the strap right, or maybe she didn't see that a strap was broken on the saddle. But it doesn't seem like that is actually the case. Do you want to talk about the ADHD here or later?
Oh, yeah. There's no way to confirm or deny this, but one of the interpretations we had with Maia, maybe you do see it less or more in the later books, is that she has ADHD. Just because the scene's very funny where she like keeps getting distracted and then she misses that there's a lantern and then kicks it, and then a series of unfortunate incidents happen and like she gets blamed for it. And she's like, I'm always getting blamed for this. And I have ADHD. And like right before I read this chapter, I had a couple of weeks ago lost a cap for a full Costco sized bottle of rubbing alcohol. And then I proceeded to knock it down and it fell all over my hall closet. And then also like into a crevice where it landed sideways. So like not only is there rubbing alcohol everywhere, it's like upside down but pressed in a way that it wasn't leaking, but like was still upside down. So I had to like move it, and then more rubbing alcohol spilled anywhere. And then I read this scene and I was like, yeah, man, sometimes it do be like that.
Yeah, there are a few more scenes where it's like, yeah, she maybe has a little bit of ADHD. I don't have ADHD, but like everyone in my life has ADHD. Like JoJo has ADHD, my partner has ADHD, my father has ADHD. Most of my like the people I work with have ADHD. And I texted her, I was like, I think Maia has ADHD. And then JoJo was like, I don't think so. And then she texted me like 2 days later, was like, yeah, she has ADHD.
It is worth pointing out that like she's also very good and quick under pressure, which is also something that people with ADHD are like good at.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, her ADHD isn't only a burden. It's actually helpful in multiple situations that she's like noticing things and then picking them up and grabbing them and like able to use them in her defense in a way that like is great. Like I'm glad. I think it's good that it's shown to be a strength and not just a weakness or like it's just an aspect of who she is for better or for worse.
so this is just something that we like there's never in this book does she go to a psychiatrist and
No.
like do a bunch of tests and like no. It's just
Yeah.
an interpretation we have and really enjoyed and was a part of our reading, so that's why we're bringing it up, and it may be something that you could look for in your own reading.
Yeah, maybe you disagree, and that's okay too. But it was a really this aspect of her personality where she does get distracted, but is more of a creative thinker for that reason and is able to really think quickly and think differently of surrounding events, is quite a lovely character choice that the author made that makes her feel really fresh. So we learned that the dragons here have a secret language. So Maya is told this by her mother when her mother is still alive. Most others disregard it, but Maia is really interested in it, so she's always listening to the dragons when they're talking to each other. Dragons can say a few words in the human language, but they do have trouble like forming the vowels. And it's so wonderful when the dragons talk. They're like, when they're taking out the one dragon, her father's dragon, Shuja, to hunt, he's like, hunt. And he says it kind of weird. And just the way that they speak is so lovely. I just love the way they talk. Um, Throughout the book, we hear that Maya's like thinking about her mother, and she describes her mother as being two mothers in her memory, which is, referring to her mother as the one who cursed her and the one who spoke to dragons. And I think that this was just such a beautiful idea of that really complex relationship and memory that we have with a dead loved one who maybe was an imperfect person or we had an imperfect relationship with, where we're trying to understand how we can still love them so much and also still be hurt by them. That was something that really intrigued me, and I'm kind of wondering how the future books will kind of move with that, because other characters have really imperfect relationships with each other as well, in a way that is, well, I think really well done.
Specifically familial relationships. This is a book that focuses mostly on familial relationships, and it really gets that feeling of loving and wanting to fight your family.
Yeah. So speaking of that, Maya and Darian are cleaning out the stables and decide to check on their snares. So they leave snares for animals in the woods. And they aren't supposed to do this. Not that they're not supposed to leave snares. They're not supposed to leave the broods today because they're trying to prepare for brood day. But they go down to where the snares are in this abandoned temple that's in the forest. And they find a small deer in one of the traps. So Darian, he like field dresses the deer. And then he tells Maya that he heard their family talking and that she probably isn't going to get a dragon this year, but he still might. And she's really hurt by this, but she kind of understands. And as they're speaking and kind of having a little bit of a heart to heart, Darian is someone that she has a really imperfect relationship with that does feel like sometimes you really hate your sibling, even though you really love your sibling. And they can be really frustrating, even though you really love them. And that's how it's described here in a way that it's really makes a lot of sense.
There's a lot of like youthful selfishness in their relationship. That's great.
Yeah, and a lot of unforgiveness and like as they're speaking, a dragon flies above them, and there are wild dragons in this area. They keep a wild stock that they'll sometimes like switch out an egg for to try to make their breeding stock a little bit more diverse. But this is the largest dragon that either of them has ever seen, and they realize that it is one of what's called the Avar, who are these kind of godlike creatures that are in the shapes of dragons. So this one is the summer dragon, whose name is Gedig. And he is kind of this portent of change, but this kind of embodiment of growth. And like they follow him. Darian yells, "Yes, I'm gonna get my dragon," because he, sees it as a portent of like change and like a blessing. And Maya is like running after it. She climbs up it, and as she's like climbing, she's like really feeling the summer in the forest, and it feels like her senses have all opened, and she's able to experience like the smell of the trees and the breeze and the warmth of the sun and all of this growth. So she's being affected by the summer dragon. And then she kind of gets distracted because she sees this like white object. This is again where she kind of is getting distracted while she's trying to do something. So she follows this white object. She's climbing and she sees it, and it's the skull of a dead dragon. She's looking at it, and she realizes that it was a victim of poaching because it has a snare around its leg, and it must have escaped and then died from its wounds here. So she's like, oh shit. And then she climbs back up and she looks and she sees the summer dragon again, and he's sitting on a mountain peak and staring at her, and they make eye contact. A pretty like amazing experience that they think that they've kind of seen one of their gods.
Yeah, Darian literally sees it, is like, I'm getting my dragon, and then splits in the middle of it, and then she goes to look at the corpse. They both interpret it as a sign that they're getting their dragons, which is like the thing they want most in the world.
Because Darian gets back first, he's able to tell his story to the village priest, whose name is Mabir.
Yeah, however we want to pronounce it.
Pretty standard fantasy name. And Maya's like immediately yelled at when she gets back, because she gets back later. Jem, who is her sister-in-law, tells her that she must tell her story to the priest the next day, but she can't tell it beforehand because he wants her story, quote, unspoiled. But then she kind of tells Jem the story anyway. She and Jem have a really close relationship. Jem was an orphan that her oldest brother Tommen married. And it's kind of described that when he married her, he felt like he was like doing a charity to her.
I think that's a little ungenerous. So Jem was like a talented horse breeder. When she was like adopted, she was adopted into that, and she was really good at that. And that's sort of why her brother Thuman, who we haven't talked about yet, but is her older brother and is the one set to inherit the Eyrie. And they do love each other. Like there's multiple scenes throughout the book, but it is sort of implied by Maia when Jem's backstory is introduced that part of the reason that her brother picked her is because there's a power imbalance in it, and that's something that he's like interested in. They establish their relationship as like complex to begin with, and like actually kind of a really interesting understanding of like, male and female like gender dynamics. That was like, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, this whole book has a really subtle look at gender dynamics that is so well done.
And I think it does the same thing within relationships within the family.
Oh, yeah.
Because Maya's the youngest, and Tommen's the oldest, and Darian's the middleest. And like the way that plays with the father who's lost his wife and has to be the caretaker for all of them. It's just like, well done,
Really well done.
It's a great family story.
So we learn Jem is a really interesting character, just such a subtly like portrayed character, and I'm really hoping that the second book does come out and we can learn more about her. But so they have this heart to heart. Maia does feel a little bit better. Brood Day then arrives, and we have this like amazing scene where, because Brood Day is a celebration because it's great for the entire village that's below the Eyrie, that the Eyrie is kind of is there because of the Eyrie. It's like supporting the Eyrie, but it's also successful because of the Eyrie. So they like Jem, Tommen, and Maga's the father. They all like get on their dragons, and they're all dressed up in their finest like dragonry clothes, and they have this like beautiful aerial display where they are flying banners behind each other, and they're braiding the banners together in the air as they're doing these kind of aerial acrobatics. And it's just really amazingly described. And I feel like this is the first time that we get a really dramatic, really close look, really detailed description of the aerial acrobatics that dragons can do, and like this cultural look at like the way that they fly their dragons around when it is not actively like a dragon fight in any of the books that we've read.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know what else to say.
They let the baby dragons out of the brood house for the first time, so they're all like, "Ooh, what's going on?" And we have some newcomers who arrive. So the newcomers' names are Belua and Rove. Belua is a priest with the Razal.
Yeah, I think Rasa is the name of the religious order, or at least the name of the religion.
He's a priest. He's ranked higher than Mabir, who's their village priest.
Yeah, he's like a priest in the Vatican who is coming out to like a local parish to use like Christianity as like a one for one.
Like a cardinal, but he's not really a cardinal.
No, he's much lower, but he's a priest from the epicenter of the religion. So he like comes with the authority of like their like I said, like their Vatican is how I interpreted it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then we have Rove, who's a military. I mean, like he's like a higher up in the military, probably not a general, but
He's also rich, is the thing that they also talk about. So he has a lot of magic tattoos all over his face and like bodies that like subtly enhance his abilities.
mhm.
And the implication is that he got them because he has money.
Yeah, and I think the implication is that he has like enriched himself through war.
Yeah, both of these people are from the Empire coming to a place that existed before colonization but has since been colonized to just, sort of check up on them. Nothing bad could happen with that.
Yeah, it's described in the book that the Eyrie has existed before the Empire came. So when the Empire came, they had to kind of change their relationship with how they bred dragons because none of the dragons are now owned by them. They all have to go to the Empire. So they can't like choose who they sell their dragons to, even though they're allowed to like keep ownership of the Eyrie itself.
And that's why Maya and Darian are like so desperate because they don't, even though they get to breed these dragons, but they don't get to keep any of them, even though it would be better for everyone if they had more breeding pairs and thus could make more dragons. So they have to basically beg the emperor to keep their own dragons.
Yeah. So over their breakfast, they discuss the sighting of Grettig. Mayber's also there. And so Darian tells his story and then Maya tells her story. And she's like kind of getting lost in the details of like feeling the forest. And like Maybeer is obviously like really like, yeah, this is such a cool, like, I'm so glad that you were able to experience this. But Belua is like, I don't believe them. I think they're making it up. They would make up anything so that they can keep two dragons.
This is sort of also where we get a glimpse at the Empire's religion, which is
Mhm.
there is one dragon, his name is Corazon, and all other dragons are like a manifestation of them. So like everything has to exist through Corazon,
Mhm.
and there isn't any space for like basically other gods or other religious expression, which is like a theme that comes up a lot in part 2 and also in part 1.
Yeah, there's a lot of like overwriting of extant religions when the empire comes through, which, is like a realistic thing that Christianity specifically did to a lot of religions. That's why we have holidays when we have them. A lot of our holidays now are placed over older holidays. But we have this like they say the Avar are like the old aspects of the gods or like the manifestation of the gods, which Belua believes is all a aspect of Corazon. But the religion that they really believe and maybe really believes is that Corazon is just one of the Avar. And you kind of like whenever Darian swears, because he swears all the time, he's like, Corazon's flaming farts. And he's like really kind of taking Corazon's name in vain all the time. So it's very obvious that these people in this village like don't really take that religion that seriously. But anyway, he's like, I don't believe that they saw them. They just want these dragons. And we need all the dragons we can get because the war isn't going well. And they have also like discussed what happened at the area that we begin the book with because that area was completely destroyed. But Maya's like, well, we can prove it. We can prove that we saw the dead dragon. We can prove that we saw Gedig and we can prove, all this stuff. So they go to look for evidence. Belua calls the dead deer offering like an offering to like a heathen god because it's in this old temple because Darian forgot it there. He blames Maya for it. They find the footprint of the summer dragon And Maia helps Jem find the dead dragon. They bring up the leg and part of her, or like the skull of the dragon, up to the where the others are to show them. And Belloa is like, all of this is an evil portent, and she is also the cause of Fren, because she's again blamed for Fren getting harmed by Jem's dragon. So he's like, she's an evil portent, and she needs to come with us to the capital to tell the story so that they can hear it. And Maya's like, well, why do I need to tell the story to Corazon if he was here? And she's like trying to logic her way through this, and he's getting more and more angry. He also glances at her breasts in this scene, like very briefly, and she kind of realizes, like, oh, he wants to separate me from my family. And like, when he first meets her, he calls her like a wildflower, and she's like, that was weird. But she doesn't like seem to realize like what the implication of that is.
Yeah, he starts off the book flirting with her and then starts to, call her an evil person and say that she's a bad thing.
She's a temptress, she's a heathen.
Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't go into any details. It's just like, yep, that's what's going on. We all know what's up.
Yeah, and it is here where Maia realizes that she is a female body in a world that commodifies female bodies. And the way that it's kind of portrayed is this like betrayal. Like, I feel betrayed by the world right now.
Well, it's also because it's so clear that like this man who has no relationship to her or her whatever has like power over her for
Yeah.
no reason. And that's part of it too, which is just she's like, oh, this person just has power over me because of this empire that came and occupied my town hundreds of years ago or whatever. That has like no connection to this land, and there's nothing I can or my family can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the parallels between like the female body and the colonization of landscape exist, and there's like a ton of writing about it. I don't think the book is making that connection directly, but it's allowing these two things to exist together here. I also think that like, I mean, I'm sure that you went through this realization, like I went through this realization when we first realized like, oh, no matter what we do, our bodies are always going to be sexualized by the world around us. And it does feel like a betrayal, and it's really upsetting. And she has this realization here, and it's really delicately handled, and it's really well done. And it's something that kind of is placed throughout the book, but not in a way that's like scary or traumatic to the reader. It's very just like gently placed, where we see it in the relationship between Jem and Tommen. We also see it in her relationship with Darian, where throughout the book she's trying to explain to Darian like, this is why I cannot go with Belloa. This is why I don't have any options here. And Darian, who's someone who's never going to have to experience that fear, really never really understands why it is so frightening and scary to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting theme that's laced really gently throughout the book in a great way. So Rove then says, well, she probably does need to go to the capital to tell her story, but Gretig, and he kind of is like, oh, Gretig probably appeared for Darian. And Darian kind of writes out Maia from his version of events. He's like, well, Darian gets the dragon, but Maia will not get a dragon. So one of you will get a dragon. Maga, their father, is like, well, we need two because they need to be a breeding pair. If we have a male dragon without a mate, it's going to unbalance and it's going to cause hierarchy issues with the other dragons. We need to have a bonded pair. And they don't listen to him. This is also a book where like the person who knows the most is almost never listened to by people who are more interested in like their own means of gaining power or influence. So Rove and Belloa are like really concerned with being the person, being like in the group of people who have the power in their hands, and they don't listen to the expertise of the broodmaster. They don't listen to Maia when Maia's like, I saw this, or I felt this, or I know this, because they have self-interest. And this is something that Maia realizes. She's like, all of these people twisted the story that Darian and I told to meet their own ends, including Maybeer, including Darian. And she was the only one who told the truth as she saw it. And it was then twisted from her to suit the means of these other people. So she's really angry. Darian gets his kit, is then given his kit. The dragons are really happy that they get to keep one of the kits this year, and they are kind of speaking to the kit in their dragon way. Do get a really sweet scene where Maga is talking to Darian. He's like, speak to it, touch it. They're not allowed to touch the babies because the babies bond so quickly. So like touching and like petting the baby will immediately start the bonding process.
Yeah, it's really we get to see a lot of dragon families, and it's like a really cute. They bond pairwise, like when they're young, and they bond for life. And the moms really like to take care of the dragons, and that you also see elderly female dragons. Bella has a elderly female dragon.
Called a nurse dragon.
Yeah, you can see pretty early that the dragons also have like complex family structures that mirror their humans. It's cute.
Yeah, and the male dragons are very involved in the brood process as well, which we're going to see in a minute. But yeah, like really lovely, really complex dragon world, like the way that the dragons are. They're so wonderful.
Yeah, the simplicity and kindness of the dragons is sometimes contrast with the humans.
The dragons are really portrayed as this animal that is extremely intelligent, but the intelligence is so alien as to be like almost ununderstandable. And that is really well portrayed as well. Where they are definitely this wild animal, this predator that's extremely dangerous when they want to be, but is extremely delicate when they also want to be. Really wonderful. The family then discusses what to do. Jem is in support of Maia. Maga says he doesn't want to let them take her, and because he also is aware of like what will happen to her if they take her. But Tommen's like, well, we should just marry her off. We were going to do that anyway. And Maya's like so incensed by this.
Tommen sucks throughout the entire book. It's one of his defining personality traits.
She's late to the feast because she's so upset. When she arrives, Maybear is telling the story of the summer dragon again, but edited so that it seems like Darien is the only one it appeared for, that she didn't even see it. And this is when she realizes that they're twisting the story to meet their own ends and is enraged. She starts packing her bag to. Oh, did you want to say something?
The only thing I was going to say is that she recognized that Maybear is cutting her out to try to protect her by hiding the truth, even to protect her. He's like manipulating the story for his own ends, and she doesn't like it.
Yeah. She starts packing her bag. Darien arrives and is like, Father wants you to be downstairs for when we send off the brood. And she's like, why did you let me take all the blame? She yells at him. He does apologize.
He's very sheepish in this scene. He's like, oh, I got everything I want and I have to get kidnapped by these religious zealots. Ugh, I'm so sorry. I feel really bad. Mom told me that I needed to protect you, and then I really just sold you out so I could get a dragon. He's like, my voice is not doing a great job of the tone. That's a little bit of a projection that Maya is putting onto it.
I think that she has reason to, because can you imagine that this kind of thing happening to you? You're like, I'm probably going to get married off to some old priest far away from home, and my brother gets literally everything he wants.
At this point, she's already packing. Like, she's like, not fucking happening. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah. She like attends the sending off, and she's like watching the babies get like pushed into these cages, and she's really disturbed by it for the first time because she's like, they're all going off to war, that most of them are going to die, and I've never really thought about this before. The baby that she had her eye on comes over to her, and she's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna like touch this little guy, and she touches him. It's a female dragon, but the dragon's like, ugh, I don't want anything to do with you, and she's like, oh, it was never for me at all, and she's just like distraught. So she's like, you know what, the summer dragon might have been showing me where to find a kit that belonged to that dead dragon in the wood.
Yeah, she puts 2 and 2 together. She rolls a nat 20 on insights and is like, wait a minute, the dead dragon was a lady dragon. So she probably has kits. And then the summer dragon landed on a faraway rock formation. I think that's where the kit is. And then,
Yeah. And also that rock formation is where they know that the wild dragons have their nests. So she sneaks off after gathering a bunch of supplies. She first reunites the skull and the leg bone of the dead dragon. I'm not sure. I thought this was going to come up again, but it doesn't.
She shows a lot of respect for the dead. There's multiple scenes of her honoring the dead. I think it's just a characterization.
Yeah, you're right. Anyway, then she continues into the forest. She sees some ancient runes, which she beds down, and when she wakes up, she realizes that she's in a poacher's roost. She follows the trail and finds a place where they are processing dead dragons, and it's really disturbing to her. And as she's looking, something strikes her in the back, and it strikes her like through her knapsack, where she has like an entire haunch of a deer She's like carrying around.
She's just carrying most of a deer for like the first part of this book. It's very funny.
Yeah, she's fucking strong. Like, can you imagine how heavy that must be?
Yeah, she took her a day and a half to get here. She's carrying most of a deer. She didn't sleep the night before.
She's like 14 too. She's like still a child.
It's we never know how old she is. She's described as marrying age, whatever that means.
Assume that must be she's 16, right? And I know that's like still a minor in our world, but I feel like in fantasy books that's 16.
I think the reason they put marrying age in is to be like legally an adult, just to be like, however old you think old enough to do stuff is, it's 18 for us, that's how old she is. She's vaguely an adult.
Yeah, it's just I don't think Darian can be any older than 17 because he is so immature.
I mean, he's a teenage boy, even if he was 19. Sorry, any teenage boys listening. He's such a middle child. I don't know.
Yeah, he has a huge middle child syndrome. Ugh.
Yeah.
She turns and shoots this. So it's a crossbow bolt is actually what's embedded itself.
Yeah, we totally buried the lead. She's in combat right now.
Yeah. Well, in D&D, like combat's like the slowest part.
Yeah. She has a full 6 seconds.
Yeah, her like what's it when you have to roll like a defense check? What's that called?
You don't actually roll defense checks in D&D. You roll dexterity checks, or you roll constitution checks, or you roll to attack. Maybe just glanced off her AC.
All right, you are just a super nerd right now.
That's all getting cut out.
Anyway, so the crossbow bolt hits her in the back. Are you sure you want to cut that out?
We'll find out later. Keep going.
The crossbow bolt hits her in the back, but because she has this entire deer haunch in her backpack, it hits the deer haunch and it's just like kind of sticks in her back a little bit. So she's okay, but she is bleeding. She turns around and she shoots him because one of the things she stole was a crossbow. Shoots this dude and kills him. First kill. And she's like, oh no, there's a bug on his eyeball because he's dead. And this is like a thing that gives her PTSD.
Okay, so there's this scene of her with her first kill, and it's the visual of it, and there's this one thing that lingers on her mind that like he's dead because there's a bug crawling on his eyeball, and that scene is just brought up a bunch, and that's what Jo is making fun of
over and over again. Yeah, she's like, I saw a bug on an eyeball.
I think it's a perfectly normal scene. Jo has some other thoughts.
Well, I think it's fine. I think it's just like, yeah, you see a bug on this eyeball. It's gross. And I mean, yeah, like, I've never killed anyone, so I don't know what that's like. It probably was it's terrible. And she's like, again, a child, and she killed this guy. So she's having this PTSD response throughout the book afterwards that she's like thinking back to this specific one because she kills more people before the scene ends.
The whole part one is like she relives when she's like, because it's real bad, and we'll get to it. I think you're blowing it out of proportions.
Okay, you can cut this out, whatever. So anyway, she kills him, and she sees like that he is the enemy soldier. So they're like very pale skinned, pale haired, pale eyed, and she's like, oh shit, he's a Herodi.
Herodi.
I kept reading it as Herald.
Sure.
And she looks at him. There's a bug on his eyeball. Sorry. There's a bug on his eyeball. She's like, oh shit, I killed someone for the first time. And then she kind of sneaks out and realizes that there are other poachers wheeling away supplies.
Well, that the poachers aren't just poachers. They're actually enemy soldiers who took out the Aerie from the first chapter that they've been warned about, and that actually danger is closer than she thought, and it's right here. And she stumbled on the beginnings of an invasion.
Yeah, and she also is realizing, like, oh, where are all the wild dragons? Oh, she's just realizing that they haven't actually seen any of the adult wild dragons in weeks. And so she's realizing that the Herodi have, like, been killing all of them, like, strategically. And she's like, well, what are they using them for?
Killing them and cutting them up in horrific ways.
Yeah, she, like mentions multiple times that the kits, because she sees a pile of dead kits, which is cool. And she says that the top frill on their head has been cut off. And she's like, well, why would they do that? And it's never actually, she never discovers why they did that by the end of the book.
They do discover why they did that. They're
why?
They're making monsters out of them.
Yeah, but like, why? The kids?
Yeah. They're sewing dragon people together.
So as she's like watching them wheeling away supplies, she hears Darian call her name from the mountain above her. And she's like, oh, fucking Darian. And she rushes up to him and she tells him what he saw. And then they realize that the poacher's wagon has a kit in it. And she's like, that's my kit. And she like tells him like, I have to get this kit so that I don't get taken to the capital.
Yeah, Darian's like, come home, dad'll forgive you. And she's like, you don't understand. If I don't come home with a kit, I have to leave town to go with this guy who's like creeping on me.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to come back and it's going to be bad. So I got to get this tit. Darian's like,
Tit. I got to get this tit.
I got to get this kit.
You said tit. Okay. Sorry. It was funny.
The edit will prove differently.
Hi, this is future JoJo. Editing right now. I did say tit.
Yeah, and like also she's like, Dad's not even mad at me. He doesn't want me to go either, Darian.
Darian's kind of a scaredy cat, and she's just like, I gotta go.
Yeah, he's a coward. He deals with situations by trying to go around them. She charges directly into them.
ADHD, baby. First thought, best thought.
A huge wounded dragon appears, who she's like, that's the baby's father, and then attacks the wagon train and is like fighting them, and it's like this really dramatic fight. And then the Herody have one dragon rider, who that dragon is fighting it with the help of dun dun dun, appears a horror dragon. And this is the first time Maia and Darian are seeing it, and they're like, that's a horror, and they're really scared of it. She then leaves Darian because he's like being totally annoying, and then she encounters the wounded dragon again while she's like trying to figure out how to make her way to the baby. She calls the dragon Malik, which is like, there's like a legend around an ancestor that she had, who he was like a father who saved his daughter, but so she just calls him Malik. It first charges her, and then we have this like amazing scene where she's trying to evade this dragon while also trying to show it that she isn't a threat, and she like is hiding in between these two giant rocks that are big enough for her but not big enough for the dragon to get its head in.
And the dragon is pretty wounded, and that's part of the reason why he can't get to her, because like literally there's arrows sticking out of him.
Yeah, there are all these arrows sticking out of his like chest and his neck. His one wing is really wounded and damaged, and he's like holding it at a weird angle. And as he's like trying to like break down these trees to get to her, the branches are hitting the arrows that are still embedded in his chest and causing him to like flinch back. It's like really a good scene.
So cool.
We see that these are really highly intelligent animals, but also like really wild. Like he is smart enough to try, like he's able to think through like, how can I get to her? But he is extremely wild. It's just like really great. She tries to mimic the sounds of baby dragons and like the non-threat sounds that dragons are making, and he kind of calms down and it almost works, and she like throws food out to him from her pack and she eats it. But then the baby cries out, and then he sticks his head as far into the crevice as he can and roars at her, and it's just like, ooh, it's such a good scene. And then he disappears to try to get his baby back. So she waits for about an hour before following him to the poacher's nest, and then she's like starts tracking him up to the poacher's nest. Darian lights a fire as a distraction, so the riders, both the living one and the undead one, leave to investigate, and then Maia and the dragon attack the cave. So we see like how absolutely devastating a dragon attack is in the scene, even a wounded one, because he's just like no holds barred killing these Herodi. He like keeps getting crossbow bolts in his chest and they're striking him, but because dragon skin is so thick, a lot of it isn't really going deep enough to do any real damage. Maia also is like starting to kill more of the Herodi. Like she is strategically killing the ones that would do the most harm to Malik. So she's like helping him get further into the cave, but then she runs ahead to try to find the baby. Do you have anything?
It's all fight scenes from here for a long time, and just know they all rip. They're all dope.
Yeah, it's like heart pounding. Like when you're reading it, and the chapters are so short and they all end on like a so then you're like, oh, I have to read another one. Oh, it's only 4 pages, I'm gonna read it. And then you're like,
one could describe it as page turning.
Yeah, it's a page turner.
Mm-hmm.
She finds the baby, and the people who are guarding it leave to investigate. They're like, what's going on up there? And so she goes to its cage, which is this huge cage in the back of a wagon. She climbs inside, and she feeds it. And she's like kind of starting the bonding process. It's kind of starting to accept her when Malik arrives and he attacks the cage. But because she's already inside it, he like knocks it over, and she's actually being protected by it. It's so Jurassic Park. It like really felt like the scene in the first Jurassic Park movie where the kids are in the car and the like T-Rex comes and pushes the sunroof down, and they're pushing the glass to try to like kill them. That's what it felt like to me.
Yep.
She is able to show him that she doesn't want to hurt the baby, and he leaves to continue fighting. She puts the baby in her pack and then
At this point, she's charmed the baby too. The baby's like hasn't eaten and she gives it food and she makes like this moop noise, which is very cute that they use a lot in the book to communicate. It's so clear that her ability to like kind of mimic back the dragon language and understand has bonded this wild dragon, both Malik and the baby together. And she's able to like literally just puts it in her backpack and then like pieces.
yeah, and it's like still saying like more food please as she's like and she's like trying to
She's like, there's potatoes in the pack, just eat one.
yeah, and it like she hears it crunching on a potato and she's like, okay, good, I found one. As she's leaving, she finds a really, really detailed map of her Aerie and she puts it away and she like takes it with her. She's like, oh no, they're gonna like she realizes like they're gonna attack the Aerie. And then I feel like this is another example of where her like easily distracted nature is something that's very helpful because she doesn't just like, okay, got a piece. She's like, what is here that I can take with me? And she kind of is walking around, she notices it, and she's like, oh, I should take that with me too. And it is really helpful. So the Harodi just then file in and they call to her that they have Darien. So they've captured her. There is a scene of distraction. She like shoots a crossbow bolt at one of them, and Darien is able to escape and make it up to her. The Harodi are like kind of like stormtroopers. They're like infinite number of them. They die really easily and have kind of bad aim. One of them does hit Darien in the leg though with a crossbow bolt, and he's then like struggling. Like they have to leave it in his leg.
I don't know if the Haradine have bad aim or if Mia has plot armor, you know?
Or maybe it's just like really dark in the cave.
It is really dark in the cave. They talk about it a lot.
Shooting by sound. Yeah, they're in a cave. They flee and they climb up the cavern, realizing that it's actually an abandoned, like humans have lived in here and they've carved, think about like a dwarf city kind of a structure inside. Malik starts pursuing them again, and the baby's like honking to him, and she calls it like a papa honk, and she like recognizes it at her being like, ah. They enter this cavern with all these carvings of the great dragons. So they have like the season Avar, so like the summer, winter, fall, and spring.
Yeah, we learn about the other dragons. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. And Darien, do you want to talk about them a little bit?
No.
Okay. Darien like really needs to rest because he has a hole, like a gaping hole in his leg. And that's when Malik appears. So she like opens up her bag and Kara, who Malik is when he's calling her, calls her Kier. And she's like, oh, like that's the name
Of the baby.
that he has named her. And she realizes that like dragons give each other names. So Kier like hops to him and is like, they're communicating with their dragon noises. She like takes a piece of meat and like carries it over to him. And it's like a really beautiful scene where he kind of looks at the baby. He's like missing an eye at this point. He's like obviously going to die, but he's still fighting. And he says her name and then like purrs and like clicks at her. And then she walks back over to Maia and like looks back at him. And then he looks at Maia and she like is able to understand that he's like, I understand that you are the only way that she will survive. And it's really this beautiful scene. Malik then starts leading them out and he's attacking the pursuing Harodi as they go. There's like one point where they lose track of where he is and they are going up the staircase and then the Harodi appear and he was hiding in a corner and he was kind of using the two children as bait as the Harodi were coming up the steps, and then he just charges into the space that they're in, like knocks them off. It's like really cool. So he's like using these really interesting tactics to kill them. They are able to finally get to the top, get out of the cave because this is a dragon nesting site. There are all these like huge wooden nests everywhere, and they're able to light them on fire to create a signal fire to try to get the attention of their father and the other adults.
Yeah. I mean, they also get out of the cave, and then there's the dragon and the evil zombie horror dragon is there, and all of the people. So they're kind of just setting things on fire as a way to, like, you know, stop people from attacking them.
Yeah, they're like trying to use it as a way for them to like keep them from coming at them so quickly. Maia is able to, I can't remember how she does this, but she's able to kill the leader, the dragon rider.
I mean, what happens is there's a bunch of cool fighting, which read the book, but she's able to ride Malik on top of the horror dragon and basically like shoot him dead from the back of the dragon and then knock him off the dragon. And then basically she's like stabbing him to death. Like he's already a pile of dirt, but she's like still going. And then her dad shows up.
Yeah, so the only way to kill the horrors is just to, like, shoot them so much that they start to fall apart because they're kind of that crumbly, cindery, kind of dry, like burnt wood kind of texture. So after you hit them with so many arrows or projectiles or slash enough off of them, they crumble into nothing. So the dragon, as Malik's like fighting it and riding down to the forest floor with her on his back, the dragon horror, it does crumble to dust because it's just gotten beat to hell. The horror that's in the shape of a human, that is the rider of that dragon, is still fighting Maia, and she, like, is able to kick it down, she's slashing it, and then she like, stabbing it in its face until her father comes and is like, "Maia, it's okay, like, you can stop." Because she's, like, past her limit, I think, a little bit with what she can handle today.
Darian, like we didn't talk about this, he's been like bleeding out slowly from his wound, and like she thinks he's dead, that she's killed so many people and Malik, and it's just like it's a lot.
It's a lot for a child to take in.
Not for an adult.
Yeah, a lot for an adult, yeah. A lot for
She
anyone.
single-handedly destroys like an entire regiment
In
of an enemy soldier
an ambush.
and 2 to 3 zombies. One of them is a dragon.
Yeah, and she's like she's never seen a zombie before either. It's not like this is normal for her to see that too. Like, she's like, "What the fuck?" Well, the first time she sees it, and then she realizes what it is. But her father arrives. She has her kit. Belloa is like, like trying to pontificate about how these are more evil omens, and she's just like, "I can't deal with this fucking guy right now." And she like is walking over to Malik, who's like dying. And she sits next to him and like is stroking his cheek as he's dying, and his baby is sitting with him, and they're just able to like, kind of send him off in a way that's quite kind. And then Darian, who's like basically delirious at this point with how much blood he's lost and how much pain he's in, is like saying that she got the blessing of because no one's listening to her. And Darian's like, she got the blessing of this adult wild dragon to take his kit. Like, he allowed her to take this kit because Bella was saying, like, you need to hand that dragon over so that they can requisition like the full amount of baby dragons that they can. You can't keep that dragon. And her father's like, well, she's already started to bond with it. Like, you can see that she's already starting to bond with it. And then Rove kind of looks at the map that she brought down. He realizes that she was able to kind of stop this ambush from happening and completely destroying the area. And he says, well, she can keep the dragon. Balua is annoyed. And we kind of realized later in the book that Rove has kind of ulterior intentions for saying that she can keep the kid.
Is playing the middle ground to help Rove, which we find out later. But yeah,
Rove plays both sides against the other.
so Maia runs away from home in part 1, single-handedly. Well, Darian helps like a tiny bit, but most of the time she's literally carrying his like bleeding body.
Yeah, there's like a point in the book where he's like, did you bring water? And she's like, yeah. And she hands it to him. He drinks all of it. And she's like, don't drink all of it. Also thirsty.
Yeah. Anyway, so she single-handedly breaks from her family, goes across the forest, discovers an enemy plot, works with a wild dragon to destroy the enemy hordes, discovers runes of an ancient civilization.
Yeah, that they didn't know existed in there.
Yeah, and then basically kills all of them by the time reinforcements show up.
Yeah, they're all dead by the time. Like, they don't have to do anything.
I think that there's one rider with a real dragon, and he gets killed pretty quick when 14 other dragons show up,
She kills a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we get to part 2. So part 1 really felt like this real adventure story, this man versus nature kind of, man versus man kind of narrative, which was really, really exciting to read. And then part 2 kind of falls into this slice of life political drama, which is not as exciting. So we do have this lull in the
They
middle.
feel like 2 different books. I mean,
They do feel a little bit, well, it gets back. It's like 100 pages of like slice.
well, but literally, like, you have a climax and an end at the end of book 1, and then book 2 introduces a bunch of different stuff. Like, I think these could have easily, comfortably been 2 books.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you're right.
Lucky for you that you get them all in one book, because they're both good books, but there is a
Yeah.
definite end to part 1 and beginning of part 2. in a way that doesn't feel, I don't know. It really confuses the pacing, I feel like.
Yeah, so I wonder if part 2 was its own book, if it would feel so slow because you'd be like, "Okay, we're starting out."
I don't think it would.
So in part 2, we meet Graydon again. Remember, he was the one in that eyrie. So the Dragonry is attempting to retake his eyrie, but that fails. And he decides to join the Dragonry. We do not see him again. I thought he was going to appear by the end of the book, but he doesn't.
I forgot his name and I thought Carrick was him. But then
No, because, yeah, I don't think they have the same, like,
no, I just assumed that he would show up, and I was like, "Well, Carrick is the Dragonry kid that's getting the most face time. It must be this guy." Not a close reading. I'm just saying, like, if I was writing this book,
well, yeah, that's what I assumed too. And I was like, but no, that's not the same name. No, I like totally understand why you would have thought that.
yeah, if I was writing this book, he would have shown up in this book, and he would have showed up in the way that Carrick's character shows up, but he doesn't. So
Yeah, yeah. And then Carrick's character kind of doesn't go anywhere.
it makes sense when you understand the plans for Carrick. So yes.
We come back to Maya. She's receiving her bond mark, which is this mark that bonds her to her dragon. It's a tattoo on the at the base of her skull and at the base of Care, her dragon skull. And it bonds the two of them together and it has multiple circles of bonding. And she and Mabier are discussing how Darian's slow healing is so slow and that he hasn't been able to finish his bond mark to his dragon, whose name is Aru, and that the bond could fail because of this. And if the bond fails, if Darian dies, then Aru would probably have to be culled because they wouldn't be able to bond him to someone else. So Maya suggests that they share the bond, that she is part of Aru's bond, just so that in case Darian dies, they don't lose the dragon.
She specifically suggests it to Maybeer, who is like the local friendly priest, because this would be like heresy.
Yeah, and he's like, that's heresy. But he's like, maybe.
And she specifically thinks Bellu is causing this to happen, so she doesn't trust him.
Yeah, Belloa is keeping Aru from Darien, which is not a good thing to do when you are trying to bond a dragon. You're supposed to be with them, and that's weakening their ability to bond.
It's unclear if this is intentional or not, or if Bellu is just bad at everything.
Yeah, we see like Aru is not doing well. Like his tail's dragging behind him. He's really kind of listless. He's obviously feeling that like lack of the completion of the bond. And Belloa is still there and she's like, why the fuck is this guy still here? Like she's so annoyed that he's still there. And he's like lingering outside and she's like, oh no, like did he hear? But it doesn't seem like he. So she then goes to Jem and Tommen and she's like, we need to finish Darian's bond mark. And they agree. So Maybier's like, okay, like let's do it, but we can't tell anybody. And it's just her and Mabier there with Darian. And so Jem and Tommen are not aware of this happening, but she is the one who is going to share his bond mark. After they finish, Fren, who is still in the. I'm like, you totally forget about Fren because you forget that the whole, like all of those events that happened in the end of the first part happened in like 2 days. You think like, oh, it must be months later now.
Fren is the most important person who's not in a good chunk of the book, because we learned that he's good at bows and arrows and that he is part of this cult that is important in this chapter of the book and not the other chapter of the book, part of the book, and all of this stuff. And he's just not there for a ton. So they end up like talking about him nonstop. It's kind of funny. Very Sir not appearing in this book, but he does actually show up towards the end for like most of the end of the book.
Yeah, he grabs her arm and kind of in a delirium tells her this prophecy mentioning the word Asha. So he's like, the shadow rises and you have to be there. Like, Asha is watching or whatever. And she's like, who the fuck is Asha? But he falls asleep and she doesn't get her answer. She like asks maybe, or maybe's like, shh, no, we don't say that name. And then Darian is getting better, so he's taken home where he heals.
It's something that wasn't explored in this book much, but like her and Darian are now connected and both of their dragons
Yeah.
are now connected, which is good because they wanted them to be like bond mates. And it's
Well, I think the two dragons also have bonding engravings on there.
Mhm.
Like their little tattoos are bonding them together too.
This is something I'd love clarification on. Are her and her brother now bonded, or is it just that she's bonded with his dragon?
She's just bonded to his dragon.
Oh, okay.
But I think through that bond, she's kind of bonded to him.
I thought they were, I couldn't tell if they were all connected together or if it was just her and the dragon. Because they also do a mark on, like everybody gets a new mark, both dragons and both kids.
Yeah. But Darian doesn't know that she's sharing the bond mark with Aru. And Maybir's like, don't tell him. We'll tell him when the time is right. We then have like a ton of short scenes that the act of raising dragons and how to care for the dragons is described. Like, this is how we put their wing ports in, which is like a hole in their wing where the saddle strap goes through. This is how we teach them how to how to get used to the weight of a saddle on their back. Things like that. I'm not going to describe any of them in detail because there are just so many of them. And
Yeah, Darian wakes up in this
yeah,
part and they all get better and they all go through various training montages. They also
so many. One training montage after another. They also learn how to shoot arrows with Friend, who's the best archer in the world, apparently.
in the area. I mean, everyone's pretty good. All of Maya's shots
Yeah,
hit.
Maya's like aim is amazing.
Turns out Maya's also super good at archery, maybe with her connection to the spiritual, who knows? It's just like it's another
Yeah.
thing that like she's just like pretty good at, which is, it's nothing she doesn't put the work in, but it just seems that Maya's a fantasy protagonist and it's pretty obvious.
Cheese, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they try to hand wave it by like she's hitting the mark every single time in this one scene. And Friend's like, it's because you're connected to Asha. And she's like, I don't know about that, but okay.
We do learn about Asha. Do you want to talk about do we learn about it now or is it later?
Right. Actually, this next scene.
Well, there you go.
So Rove is still there too. He decides to seal the caverns in the mountain because he thinks they're too much of a liability. But Maybir wants to see the carvings that Maya and Darian saw before they're closed up. So he asks if he can go to see them. So they take him to the mountain. So it's Maya and Maga in this giant room with him. And this is where he describes Asha. And he's basically saying that like Asha is like the embodiment of truth and it's older than the Avars. We learned that the Avars, I don't know if we learned it here or somewhere else, but we learned that the Avars actually appear differently to different cultures. So because her culture reveres dragons so highly, the Avar appear as dragons. And there's this other group of people who live in the desert that don't have any dragons. And the Avar appear to them as horses.
I like this scene because it's like, ah, yes, the two types of people, dragon girls and horse girls.
Yes, inside you there are two wolves. One is a dragon girl and one is a horse girl. It is kind of like, I don't know, and she's like, but what does that mean? That Asha is truth. And he's like, it means what it means. And she doesn't really, she's like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, you'll know when it's time. And she's like, okay.
I mean, if you didn't get it before, the fact that there's a summer, fall, winter, and spring dragon, it's a religion about like cycles. And
Yeah.
this summer cycle also signals the end of a cycle and then the new beginning, which is like full of destruction and blah, blah, blah.
But also new growth.
Yeah.
Whereas Corazon, like the belief in Corazon is like Corazon was the end of the cycle. So he's like dragon Jesus, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a monotheistic religion where everything is an aspect of this one dude, dragon.
Yeah. But Asha is like the religion that predates him and is more accepting of like these multiple aspects of different embodiments of things that all exist within the cycle. So they're talking about this, but then another group of Herodi ambush them, and they're also attacked by the shadow creature that isn't a horror, but is like it kind of goes into Maya's mind and it makes her really scared. She gets like a nosebleed. And the two dragons, Shuja and Xian, which is Rove's dragon, are able to kind of fight it off and it goes away. And they're able to get out, but they're trying to figure out what this thing is. So they meet and Rove tells Tommen, he's like, you have to go to the capital to requisition troops and supplies because we need to figure out how to get all these Herodi to go away. They also kind of discuss what the thing in the cave was, and they call it an Idimu, which is like a dark spirit, like a spirit of darkness. Bella's like, it's a demon, but Maber's like, it's just a different aspect of the Avar.
Which is sacrilegious, and Bello does not like that. Yeah, a thing that starts here is this conflict between the fact that they are experiencing basically villains from the past religion that are described in the past religion, and the new religion just doesn't have any terminology for them or an explanation for them, but can't use the past's understanding because it's sacrilegious. So you have a lot of people being like, it can't be that. The thing that you're just that's like very clearly described in this old religion, it can't be that because it's got to be our thing. And they're like, and that thing is, and they're like, we don't know, but it definitely can't be your thing.
And it's also being caused by Maia because they think she's like this vessel for evil. Um,
Yeah, it's definitely a 17-year-old girl's fault why there is a dragon that has the ability to like go into people's minds and create fear.
yeah, so Tommen returns like 2 weeks later with the dragonry. So he's coming with all these troops. We also meet this religious order of warriors called the Juza, and their dragons can breathe fire. So they're like a special breed of dragons. Um, so we meet the two characters that we meet who have names who are important are Carrick, who is in the military, and Adai, who's the leader of the Juza. We also meet refugees from the captured area. They come, and they already know about Maya and Darian, and they realize that Maya and Darian have, and but Maya more so has kind of reached this full hero status, and the religious people, specifically Adai, really hates this because he thinks that she's becoming more like kind of a threat to the order of things. Belarus starts to like mellow out here. Like he reads a letter and he kind of looks at her and then he's like, "Mm." And he's still like a total piece of shit, but like he's not as much of a piece of shit. They discuss kind of what to do with the refugees, and Maga's like, "Well, we can find a place for them here. Like, I'm sure they all have talents." Adai's like, "No, they have to keep going." Rove's like, "This is a military operation. We don't have room for them." So Maiga is able to say, like, well, let's see who we can find a place for. And they say that they can keep them to this like specific religious holiday, and then if they can't find a spot for them, they'll send them off.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it also sort of shows that the family is losing control over their own land and
Yeah.
areas because, like, her dad is just sort of like, there's plenty of space here. We can figure it out. We'll just eat less, whatever. And then, like, Rove is like, actually, no, we don't have enough food. And her father's like, bitch, it's my food. I can determine
Yeah.
it's not enough. Like, and they start like cutting down their trees.
Yeah, he's even like, can't your men hunt? And he's like, well, we hunt sometimes. Yeah, and then they're like, we need to clear cut your forest. And he's like, I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, too bad. And then they're like, we have to put palisades and like anti-dragon artillery on top of all of your
He
buildings.
starts talking about the barracks. Everyone's like, "What barracks?" And he's like, "The ones we're gonna build out of your forest."
Yeah, and he's like clear cutting this huge road through the middle of their forest and like all this
Like
stuff.
defiling the remains of the temple that they originally saw Gedeg at. It's like this book is about sort of taking away more things from Maya and the family, and this is just such like a clear example of how they are just losing and losing more things under the pretense of protecting them, but really it's protecting the empire's stake in their area.
Yeah, and it's here where Tommen kind of mentions this thing about a charter system for the Ares, which they were able to defeat that like charter system a few years ago. And Mag is like, I'm not listening to that right now.
Super understand what that was, but basically the empire is trying to spin up a legal way to formally take control of the areas away from the people who actually own them and have been operating them literally before the empire existed.
Yeah, so there are more training montages as they prepare the dragons for flight. So the dragons are supposed to have their first flight on the holiday that they're going to send off the villagers, and the villagers are like, we really want to see them fly for the first time because they gave us so much hope hearing their story. And they have this really beautiful remembrance holiday where they send boats down their river, and all of the refugees from the other area like put kites in the air. It's really quite lovely.
It's sort of like a solstice. They talk about it specifically as being the day of like the winter dragon.
Yeah, it's kind of like it feels like a Day of the Dead festival a little bit.
What if the solstice and Day of the Dead were the same day?
Yeah. So the next day, they take their first flight, and there is talk throughout the book of these different weather structures, but the one that happens the day of their first flight is called a morning tide. And it's basically this huge formation that allows them to fly much higher than they usually can. It's extremely rare and is an absolute like pleasure and like joy to fly in. So the like dragonry can't fly because they were told like don't fly during their first flight. So they're kind of like jealous that they can't fly, but they're, like, really excited that this is, like, a fabled event, and it actually makes that full hero status of Maya mostly, but also Darian kind of pump up even more because they're like, oh, it's this symbol, of how the Avar are shining down on them.
There's a lot of really complicated and specific descriptions of weather structures and air movements and like updrafts and all that that's like in this book and really factors into the fight scenes and then also
Yeah.
like the chase scenes. And it's really good and it's really cool. And we will not talk about them because it's too specific. But just so you know, the fight scenes in this rock. There's a lot of really concrete descriptions of the scenery and how it impacts the fights, and each fight is
Yeah.
different.
And then like Maya's understanding of that specific environment and the air structures in the specific environment, allowing her to gain the upper hand, even though she isn't as experienced as a flyer, which like makes a ton of sense because otherwise you'd be like, how is she holding her own? But it's because she really understands her landscape, which is great. It's so cool. So in the following days, Maya and Darian are practicing flying, and they finally are able to slip their escort because they've been having escorts for safety reasons. They kind of have a heart to heart. They fly to this far mountain. Darian discusses like, "Oh, if you could crest the peak, you could fly anywhere. Like if you could get up to that peak, which is like higher than where many of them can actually fly on a normal day because of the like wind structures." But he's like, "If you could get up to the top of that peak, you could launch yourself and you'd be free to go anywhere."
Yeah, a lot of the dragons don't flap their wings a bunch. They like crest on air currents like a bird would.
Yeah, like a seabird.
Yeah, so he's like, it'll get you further faster because you'd be so far up, all you would have to do is glide for miles.
Yeah. As they're playing around on this mountain, the horrors appear again.
Oh, wait, can I just before we do this, I do want to say this. So at this point, Darian like confesses to Maya that he's like really
Oh, yeah,
jealous
yeah.
of her. And this is where his like middle childness really fucking comes out because he's like, so our older brother totally was gonna like run the area and have that, and that's fine. But then like I was the next most important person, and then all of a sudden now everyone talks about you and cares about you, and you're my little sister. And she's like, oh, okay, wait a minute. A lot of bad things happened to me, and you're like treating them like they're not that big a deal. And then he's also like, yeah, but you just like took what you wanted, and I should just take what I want. And then she's trying to explain, like, Darian, I thought this guy was going to kidnap me and rape me. That is why, like, literally uses those terms.
Yeah.
That is why I had to do all of this stuff. I didn't do it because I thought it would be like cool or I was like trying to do some self expression. It was desperation. And he's like, okay, but like not listening to her. It's just important for what's about to happen.
He has no real understanding of how dire her situation was in the first part of the book because again, like this is not something he ever would have ever had to deal with. He also says in this scene, he's like, "I sometimes feel like Aru listens to you more than he listens to me." And Maya's like, "Ugh," because it's because of like the bond mark, so she doesn't say anything. But he does say like in the scene, he's like, "Sorry, Maya, I know I've been a butt," which is such a thing that a sibling would say. Well, my sister and I say that to each other, like, "Stop being a butt." And I laughed out loud when I read that. It was just, like, so even though this scene is, like, really important, it also has, like, that in it.
It's a really great brother sister
Yeah.
scene.
But then the horrors appear again, and there are 3 dragon rider horrors, and they're, like, sliced into the dragon. The one dragon has knife arms. It's, like, really scary. Darian, because Aru is a stronger and faster flyer, is Maya's like, "You have to go and alert the Aries so, like, they can bring reinforcements." And then she goes to warn the escort because the horrors are, like, trying to get to the escort. And there is this insane dragon fight that follows that's just really cool. I don't know if you have anything you wanna say about the dragon fight.
It ripped.
It was really great. Bella was, like, also part of the dragon contingent that's sent to, like, be their escort, and Maya, through the course of this battle, is able to save his dragon, whose name is Zell, and she's, like, kind of confused by this is actually, like, a thing that she's confused by throughout the whole book because he's such a piece of shit, but he is really kind and loving and has a really good relationship with his dragon, so she's like, "I can't completely disrespect him because he obviously understands his dragon." Whereas, like, Adai, like, refers to his dragon as an animal. They never actually learn the dragon's name, which is, like, a huge faux pas. You're supposed to introduce yourself and your dragon, and he doesn't introduce his dragon. During this fight, Maya, like, her head gets snapped against Kyr's neck, blacks out. She gets a really bad concussion, and it like is affecting her ability to really understand what's happening in the fight. And it's just like so well done. And then the Idumu appears again, that shadow creature, and is showing her visions of her being thrown from Kyr's back and against the mountain, and like Kyr being slaughtered and like processed by the poachers, and she's trying to fight it. And it's like more substantial now. It's not just a shadow, but they are able to get out of this issue. They are grounded. And while she heals, she practices her bow more. And she also tries to imitate Kyr's language. So like this whole book, she's been teaching Kyr. They've been teaching Kyr and Aru words. So Kyr calls chicken buck buck because chickens go like buck. And she calls fish like shish because she can't say like the F word, or she can't say the letter F.
Mm-hmm. We all understood what you meant.
Kyr can't say the word fuck. Maia is now like trying to imitate Kyr because she's like, Kyr is like making these click, click, clicking sounds. And she's like, what do the click, click, clicks mean? And so she starts to like try to imitate Kyr, and Kyr's like, and she says no in a way that it just like, no, girl. And then she is trying to teach Maia what different clicks mean. And Maya's like, oh.
Kyr really has the vibe of like when your mom or dad uses slang where they're like, that's on fleek. And you're like, yeah.
She's like, don't be cringe, Maia.
Don't be cringe, Maia. It's actually, and it's like, oh, okay, sorry. I don't actually know if that'll pick up with the mic.
Oh, it didn't actually. I didn't hear it.
It's like,
yeah, she like click, 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 click. But Maia, like during this conversation is like, oh, you are hearing echoes and you're seeing a shape of your environment through sound. And she realizes that she doesn't ever use the word or the term echolocation, but Kyr will like go into a space and click, 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 and understand the space visually through the way the clicks echo. And then she can repeat the way that the clicks echo to another dragon, and that dragon will understand the shape of that space too. So she's like, oh, they have a 3-dimensional language, which is such a cool concept. It's awesome.
And also makes a lot of sense because dragons live in dark caves, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and they fly like bats. It's so cool. Time moves forward. The 3 dragon mated pairs that they have. So Maia's dragon and Darian's dragon are not old enough yet to lay eggs or mate, but the 3 pairs that they have lay their eggs. Bellowa is there on the night that they're laying the eggs. We get a really, really detailed description of like, this is how we process the eggs and we move them in this way and we do all this. But I'm not going to get into that because it would make this podcast 18 hours long. But Bellowa is there because he's like, I really want to see what it's like. I've never really witnessed this before. And as he's in there, as they're waiting for the one dragon to give or to like lay her eggs, he walks over to Aru and sees his bond mark. And he's like, wait, that's weird. That doesn't look right. And then Maia's like, oh shit, he's going to know. So she like pulls her hair down, but he sees her pull her hair down. So then he like grabs her by the neck and like yanks her by the hair and looks at her bond mark. And he's like screaming at her, like, what did you do? What did you do? And he like tells everybody like she's sharing this bond mark.
He also waits till literally everybody else in the family's hands are full of eggs to assault her. So they like can't stop her because it's just the 2 of them. Everyone's hands are literally full of dragon eggs and they're like, no, stop, wait, I gotta put this down, shit.
Also, like right before the scene happens, he like apologizes to her and he's like, you have to understand my relationship to my family is blah, blah, blah. And he's like, my mother died when she was young too. And Maya's like, okay.
Like, I watched my mom die, and that's why this religion is very important to me, because it's like all I have, and they took me from this dark place. And it is like a real tragic backstory, and Maya's like
not open to it. Well, he's also like, my father was also emotionally closed off like your father. And she's like, okay, huh? And in her head, she's like, that is not what my father is like. Which he's wrong. He is really wrong about Maga. Maga is not like that. Like, it would seem like that if you are not one of his children, that he is like that. But she's just like always like, I fucking hate this guy. I am not going to give him any of my empathy.
She's like, I see your reason. I don't think it's enough.
Yeah. Which like I respect. I respect that. But he's like, what have you done? This is sacrilegious. This is heresy. And Darian is then like, oh my God, that's why. And he's like, Aru, and he's trying to storm out. And Maia like yells no. And then Aru turns around because he's being pulled by her part of the bond too. And that pisses Darian off even more. So she chases after him, but he is able to fly, finds him too late, and he's already like packed up all of his stuff. And
It seemed like he'd been packing to go for a while.
yeah, they realize once she returns that he had been planning this for a long time. So Carrick, who we really haven't talked about because it's not really important. It's important, but it's not really important.
He's a fun, cool character who is just truly, truly, truly like a support character.
Yeah.
He is one of the dragonry, but he's just like a good soldier. He's a nice guy. He's not like Rove sucks and is constantly trying to manipulate. He's not part of the religious zealots that make up the Juza and the other groups. He's just like a soldier who is like a young kid and likes dragons and gets along well with them.
Maya thinks he's like kind of cute, but like in a like objective way. Like she's not there is no chemistry between them. And at first I was like, oh no, can this writer not write chemistry? But it's because she actually is just like, yeah, he's cute, whatever, but I'm like not interested.
She's like too busy. Like they have one scene together where they're just like kind of sitting in between work and it's like kind of cute and they're kind of talking back and forth.
But he's like dropping hints. He's like, it would be so nice to live here at a place like this. And like, what do you think of my dragon? Do you think he'd make good breeding stock? And she's like, I don't know. His legs are pretty like he's pretty bow legged.
That's a joke. They're flirting.
I kind of feel like she's like, no, he like wouldn't be good.
No, they laugh afterwards. But yeah, so Carrick is like the closest thing this gets to a love interest for Mia, and they're both like, well, we get along, but also we're in the middle of this like really tense situation, and you're kind of part of the occupation of my home.
But whatever, we've been talking about this too long. But they find out that Darian has been talking to Carrick this whole time and kind of asking him all these questions about the dragonry. And Carrick like didn't really think anything of it. He was like just answering his questions, but Darian like confided in him that he wanted to join the dragonry and like be a warrior, which none of them knew about. And so he had been like slowly stealing money, stealing supplies, packing his clothes, preparing for this. And like Darian does like go up to Maya up like earlier in that evening and is like, Carrick wants to talk to you. And Maya's like, what does he want to talk to me about? And he's like, I don't know. And she's like, when does he want to talk to me? Because like we're kind of busy right now. And he's like, anytime. And it's obvious that Darian like thinks that Carrick could take his place as the bonded dragon for the mating pair. And then he could go and do what he wanted to do.
Based on everything we know about it, not at all how it works. It's just sort of like, oh, there's this cute boy around my age who like wants to marry my sister and like kind of take my place in the family so I can take his place in the dragonry. That sounds great. And it's like, based on everything we understand about this world, that's not how it works at all.
I also would know that. It's again an example where his character's selfishness is getting away of his character's ability to see reason and logic. But anyway, they kind of have this fight as she's trying to get him to not like take off on his dragon. And he like is yelling at her and he's like, everything is yours now. She then yells, you need to stop being so selfish. And then he just takes off. And she tries to chase after him on Kier, but again, Kier is not as strong of a flyer. They get to that mountain and it's like pouring rain, it's lightning, it's night out. It's really dramatic. And she lands and she's watching him as having Aru like run up the like he's running and then launching himself and then running and climbing and launching himself up the side of this like mountain cliff and gets to the peak and then jumps off. And she's like, he's gone. And it's such a cool dramatic scene. It's like amazing, but it's like heartbreaking. So she returns and Maga has already, it sounds like I'm saying Maga. It's like Magha. Says like that he's going to search for him. He's saddled up his dragon. And then he's told that he can't leave. And it's revealed here that Tommen has actually sold the rights to the Eyrie to be chartered and didn't tell Magha that beforehand.
Yeah, Maga, when they needed to like pass a message to get all of these reinforcements, he like gave his ring to Tommen, and Tommen took it as an excuse to act on his behalf because he's the heir. So he's like, I'm already basically own it, so I'll just sell it to the Empire.
And then Tommen applied for the rights to the charter, which he thought at that point he was like, yeah, like I'm a shoo-in, like they'll definitely give it to me. And Maga is like, incensed, and he like thrusts the ring onto Tommen's finger and then like leaves. Adai sends one of his Juza warriors with him, and Maia's like, I don't want that. I'm gonna go alone. I'm gonna get my son. And Adai's like, don't worry, you'll thank me. And they're all kind of concerned about that. But he leaves and he goes to search for Darien. Days pass and he hasn't returned, and Maia and Jem kind of realize Maia faked everyone out, at which Darien was able to catch when she went to get the kit in the first half of the book. So she's like, what if he faked everyone out and just actually went in this other direction? So Maia and Jem decide to go in search of Darien in a different direction. And as they're searching, they find the dead, rotting, discarded bodies of all of the refugees, along with a Juza arrow.
The refugees had finally found a second home to take them in, and the Juza had basically gone out and slaughtered them.
To quiet the story of Maia and Darien and the Summer Dragon.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no. And like now they're really afraid because Adai sent one of the Juza with their father. They're afraid that the Juza is going to kill their, or has already killed their father and Darien. So they're like, we have to tell Rove. So they fly back and are immediately arrested. And Rove is there and he's like, well, I also applied for the Ares Charter and they'll probably give it to me because obviously you guys can't handle it.
Okay, he's tired of being bossed around by this little mischievous girl, and she's like, I am reporting a crime, sir.
Yeah, and Adai's like, I need to perform an inquisition against you because you're all heretics. And he says, like, Maybear's also a heretic because he's teaching the old religion. So he imprisons Jem.
So they confront Adai and the Juza on their crimes, and they're like, yep, we killed them all because they were heretics. And then they're like, Rove, are you going to take that? And Rove's like, I really want to steal your home. So yes, I'm going to do it. And I don't need you. So if they're going to get rid of you, and then I can just steal all the babies that just hatched, I think that's great.
Like older nurse dragons will care for the eggs and care for the kits after they're born. They don't actually need the brood parents to take care of the baby dragons after they're born. So he's like, you already laid all the eggs.
I can just get new brood pairs from all of the eggs.
Yeah, I might like lose a year of breeding, but then I don't have to deal with any of you. But he does want to keep the dragons that they have right now as the brood pairs because they're really good breeding stock. So Adai does threaten to kill Jem's dragon, and Rove's like, don't do it. I need that. I want that dragon to breed. So they realize that like they kind of still have a little bit of leverage with Rove, but they do imprison them. But during the scene, Belua is like appalled by what they did. He's showing like shock on his face. Like he did not know that this was going to happen. Later that night, Carrick, Fren, Tommen, and Belua break them out, and they're like, we need to go to the mountain to get the evidence because there's this room in the mountain that shows the old religion. This was a part where I didn't really, I was like, you think they're going to be able to prove it with artwork? That never works. No one listens to artists.
Very clearly, they're in a power play, and it doesn't really matter what the truth is, but they think that they can get the truth. It is the thing that like doesn't make any sense logically. Like they were never going to find the secrets to their freedom from religious persecution in the truth that is in this mountain. But if you think of it that like Belua just really wanted to know what was up, it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. So they lead to the mountains with the help of Carrick, whose battalion is the one who's in charge of like patrolling that area right now. And they're able to get into the innermost chamber of the mountain, which is this huge crater that was left by a defunct volcano. It is really a lot like the mountain in Aragon, where there's that city inside the mountain.
The dungeon crawl.
It's basically that, yeah. There's like this huge glacier that's sitting on top of this glass.
Yeah, it's just like Aragon.
It's like Aragon. That giant gem.
Yeah.
That giant gem thing that shatters. Guess what's going to happen to this glacier in the glass?
Yeah.
And so there are all of these huge panels of art depicting all of the different versions of the Avar. And they explain again that like all of the ages of men, the Avar took different forms, and the dragons were probably like a creature that was made and wasn't. So like this is the age of dragons. The dragons didn't always exist.
Yeah, they have a depiction of machines, and they talk about chariots.
Which sound like tanks and airplanes.
Yeah, that don't drive and stuff. So it seems like the Summer Dragon is set in an Earth that already had like technological advancement to the point where they were able to like genetically engineer dragons, even though magic is real? Unclear.
Unclear. Well, think it's like the Wheel of Time, kind of. Like the Wheel of Time is technically like Earth, but like it goes through cycles.
But yeah, so like, surprise, technology has regressed from some sort of calamity.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, this everyone will believe the truth. The acolyte of Maybeer is there and he's taking all these sketches because he's really good at drawing. And then they realize that there are dozens of horrors clawing at the ceiling trying to get out. So they've been stuck in this cave for weeks and starving because they need to eat. And they've been trying to get their way out. So they've been like trying to get whole, like crack the ceiling. And they're like, oh shit, we have to leave before they see us. So they try to escape. Kara is able to like click, click, click her way into finding a tunnel. But as they leave, the horrors break the ceiling and it buries everything that they were just looking at under the glacier. They find the spot where they like, as they're kind of trying to make their way out of this dungeon, they find the spot where all the horrors were made. So they're like, they didn't really know what made the horrors before this, but they realized that they were made and they're like these awful, like half dragon, half man zombie creatures.
There's a really great illustration of one of these horrors in the book where you're just like, oh yeah, they just like stitched a bunch of corpse parts together. We're like, we did it.
Yeah, so it's like really horrific. The Idamu then appears and is like, I've been enjoying this one. And he like really enjoys the horrors because they are also in like a ton of pain and fear because they're like undead. They like didn't choose to become horrors. They were sacrificed basically.
So the shaman made just like a ton of horrors that we hadn't seen before, like dozens and dozens of dragon horrors, and then like also like people horrors, and then died at the beginning of the book. And they've just been like hanging out in the ground, kind of slaughtering. There was like a collection of people that were imprisoned, possibly to be chopped up into horrors, and they killed all of those. And the Edmundine is like, I really enjoyed it when all of those prisoners were viciously torn apart. And you're like, okay, you suck.
So realize that the reason that there aren't that many Harrody left is probably because the horrors have been killing them because they're the only things that are left in the mountain. And he tries to give Maia more like visions of fear, and Maia tries to counteract it with what she loves. So she like imagines the Aerie and her family and the dragons and all these things. And then it's like, ha ha ha, now I know what you will love, so I shall destroy it. And then it sends the horrors to attack the Aerie. And they're like, oh no.
Not my favorite, but it really keeps it tight, you know? It's like, I am fear. I will show you all the worst things in the world. And you're like, okay, cool, got it. Moving
Yeah.
on.
So they send Jem to warn the rest of the Dragon Men in Carrick's, it's called a Talon, to get them to like, so that they're safe. And the others go back to the area to warn them. As they arrive back, Adai then tries to arrest them again, but they're like, no, we need to move the dragon eggs. We need to move them into the ice because they have like these ice faults below at the bottom part of the Aerie, which is like more protected than the rest of the Aerie.
The current area is built on top of the older area, which is kind of cool. So they are hiding in the old area to protect for the horrors that are coming at them after being sent by Edamai. And
Yeah, so they start moving the eggs, but it's a really slow process. And the horrors are able to break through. There is a really long fight. All of the brood sires get like pulled out of the stables, and all of the brood dams get pulled out of the stables as they're trying to move.
palisades are sieged, and you see they close the doors and then the doors are ripped open, so they're fighting the
Yeah.
dragons at the door, and then like chunks of the barn that they're essentially in keeps getting ripped up, and like dragons
Yeah.
are fighting dragons, and like arrows are shooting into other people, and like every now and then they take a break to like move a single egg, and then they're back to punching people.
Yeah, and like the Juza dragons that can breathe fire, breathing fire, which is actually like a burning liquid. And so they're blowing fire on these creatures and they're feeling like, even when they're like in the door and everything's closed, they're feeling everything shake around them from just the force of the anti-dragon weaponry shooting. They're feeling the shaking of the palisades because of how much force is in the bow string.
It's such a cool fight.
It's a really good, it's really long, it's really scary. The
Mhm.
Edemu appears again and Ada is like, if I kill Maya, it'll stop it.
Well, for that, they have to like basically abandon the eggs and the broods. Like everyone is basically either been ripped out of
Yeah.
the area or is already in the meat cellar. So they like go down into the meat cellar and the meats. So the not the meat cellar, it's the eye cellar, but that's where they keep the meat. And that's where the old area is. But the old area used to have access out. So they have these doors that are basically boarded up. So now the evil dragons are ripping out the doors to this ice cellar and like scratching their way in, and they have to like kill them as they come in.
Yeah, and they have no way out. They're like trapped there because there's no other way out, and they're running out of arrows, and they have to shoot them full of so many arrows to get them to crumble. And like if you touch the horrors, it's so cold that it burns you. Yeah, it's a really good fight, but Adai turns to Mai and is like, "If I kill her, it'll stop." So he like pulls his blade on her and is like advancing toward her, and Belua then attacks him, and gets mortally wounded in the process, but is able to stop him from hurting Maya.
Pulls weapons on each other and then shoots at each other, and like Bella
Yeah,
gets hit and Adai gets hit, and Fen hits another Juzu who's like down there.
and then Maya kills the other Juza.
Yeah.
Maya then fights the Imidu, fantasy words, Idimu in her head, and she responds with anger instead of fear, or instead of like love, and that does work for some reason. I'm not sure why that. It weakens it. It's starting to like get a form, but the dragons that are left are able to finish it off and kill it, and it has like this like gross dragon skeleton kind of inside of it. It's like a dragon goo creature. I kind of think it like maybe looked a little bit like the forest spirit in Princess Mononoke after its head gets cut off and it like grows into that giant like monster thing is how I kind of imagined it. But she realizes that it's just like the Avar of fear and despair, and that's like what it is. It's an aspect, right? So it doesn't know anything else. The battle is over. They are able to win, but with really really heavy casualties. Adai is still like kind of alive. She shoots him like 3 times in the head to kill him. She's like, I'm not dealing with this guy. I'm gonna kill him, which I have a lot of respect for because I feel like a lot of times in books like this, she's like, I would be as bad as them if I were to kill them, so I let them live and be a thorn in my side for the rest of the series.
No, she kills him dead as soon as he like attacks her.
Yeah, she kills him like really kills him. She like extra kills him.
Well, he also so he's got like all of these magic tattoos, so he's just like extra strong. So you got to
Oh
use
yeah, I forgot about that.
yeah.
Belua, who is dying, he's like, please forgive me. And she's like, I don't want to. And then he dies, and she's like, I didn't forgive him. And I was like, you know what? Respect for that too.
It's more like she sees the moment where he's dying and like she should forgive him, and she can't get there,
No.
and he
Yeah.
sees that on her and was like, my religion was a cage. And then he dies and she's like, yeah, she's kind of burnt out at the end of this book. She talks about that. I mean, throughout the entire book we haven't talked about this, how she's like dealing with PTSD and fear, and that's sort of mirrored. And when Iduma like actually forces her to bring up these memories, like he forces all these horrible images and memories on her, and it's like PTSD, the ghost dragon.
The yeah, it is kind of like the physical manifestation of her PTSD.
Yeah. Metaphor. Books.
Yeah. But she doesn't regret not forgiving Belua. She's like realizes that she can't, and then he dies, and she's like, well,
This shit is like, he did so much bad.
yeah, you being good for a minute doesn't replace all the shit you stirred. And like, this is like his fault, the situation they're in right now. Not all of it, but like part of it. A lot of other people are dead. Carrick dies. Yeah, and his dragon dies.
Which makes sense because they kind of never set him up as a love interest. They kind
No.
of set him up as a side character, and you're like, I don't feel like he's going to be in this book very long. And he makes it longer than I thought because he dies like in the climax. But yeah, he's just not there anymore. And she's like, oh, that was sad.
Mabier also dies, though it's kind of seems like he just died of old age during the battle.
He gets attacked by Edamu.
Oh, yeah.
He basically confronts Edamu to give Maya a chance to get away during the beginning of this attack. I think when they're in the place where all the horrors were made. And he's like kind of unconscious for most of the battle. And it seems like the magic fight against the evil PTSD dragon ghost killed him because it was too powerful.
Yeah, you're right. So in the aftermath, yeah, she is like really, really burnt out. She's kind of watching herself do the motions after the battle ends. They continue taking care of the eggs. So they only have one intact breeding pair, and it's Tommen's breeding pair. her father's female dragon, who was her mom's dragon, disappears, and they don't know, they haven't found her body, they don't know where she went, so they're not really sure what is going on there. But
Gem's dragon dies, right?
yeah, so she has one dragon. She has Audax left,
Yeah.
but her female dragon dies. Gem is like crying with Colliver's head in her lap for hours, which is really sad. I think Zell survives, which is Balua's dragon, and she's like helping to care for the eggs because they have all these eggs now without like dragons to care for them.
Yeah, she basically like goes into the nursery and like hangs out with the eggs and just like cries over Blua. And it's like,
Yeah, it's very
oh.
sad. Yeah. So like time passes. Maya like describes herself as being literally numb to like things happening. A letter comes saying that Maya is to be arrested when the next like battalion of Juza come. And Rove's like, I'm not gonna arrest you. Once he comes, he's going to arrest you, and I'm not gonna stop him. But like whatever you do before then is what you do.
Literally like, well, I wanted to steal your Aerie, but all of my men are now dead, and that's who were going to help me staff this Aerie. So I guess I gotta keep you around. And they're like, cool. He's like, I think I'm still gonna get the charter.
Yeah, he's like, I still think I'll get it, but Chaman is going to be like employed as his broodmaster. So, and like also Fren is a enemy of the state now because he's a heretic, so he like has to go into hiding. And Jem and Maya decide to leave together on the brood day. So Tommen and Jem like say goodbye, and he's like, I've been so bad to you, like I haven't been a good husband. And she kind of is like, yeah, but I still love you.
So when Tommen comes back, she like wraps her arms around him and like loves him. And it's sort of like, this is another scene where like she's leaving this time. And he's like, oh shit, like there's all of this stuff that happens that like kind of puts us at odd. That's like puts a damper on our relationship. But I do love you. And
Yeah.
we are married. And now you're leaving with my sister who can never return for sights unknown. And I do not know when you will be back. And I am heartbroken about this. And I feel partially responsible because it's 100% also my fault. Not 100% is his fault, but like 100% this is part of it. Like he definitely fucked up.
Yeah. So they say goodbye, and a morning tide is forming, and they can kind of see the dragon battalion in the distance, and they take off. They fly. There are Juza like pursuing them, but the whole time Maya's like, I can't even give them a thought because they're never going to catch us, basically.
Mhm.
And they like lift off the air in the mount, like that's hitting the mountain, and they kind of peak the same way that Darien did when he flew away.
Even higher.
Even higher, yeah, because of the morning tide. And as they're like flying, the Juza like hit the mountains, but they hit this like choppy bit of air. And she's like, they might survive or they might get pushed against the mountain and like killed. And she's just like, whatever. She's like really numb to it. And then they fly to search for their father and Darien. And that's how the book ends.
Yeah.
So
Maya's home is destroyed essentially, and she has to leave.
how do you think that the second book will? This is the first book. Okay, let me just say this. This is the first book that we read that I really wanted to read the second one immediately after finishing it, and I can't.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
I'm so sad.
I don't know if it'll ever exist.
Kind of worried that it's not going to ever exist. He posted like once a year ago, and he was like, here's the sketch for the cover. I don't know what that means.
I don't trust most authors to write a second book, and that's not, it's just
Writing's hard. Yeah, he has a full-time illustration job. So yeah, do you want to talk about the book?
yeah. So you and me have talked about like how we want to read these books. Are we going to try to do like a close reading, like in a way you would read like in a creative writing class, or do I want to read it more as like a traditional fantasy reader who's just, just trying to read a fantasy book and not trying to think too much about it? And I really read this as like a very traditional fantasy book because it really just like grabs you. And the fight scenes are so good. And it really compels you. The only problem with it is that I kind of do think it should be 2 books because you lose all forward momentum after part 1 and then you build it back up. So like if they were 2 different books, you wouldn't feel this because both of them start a little bit slow and like introduce elements of the world and then like go into a balls out, like dragon fight scene with like interesting action, and like the action is different in every scene, and then the way that the world interacts in the settings, different settings interact with the fight are really cool. And you get a really good sense for the terrain and everything. And it's like really compelling and interesting, and different characters like fight different ways because they're different things. Like the human warriors fight different than the zombie warriors, and the dragons fight different than the zombie dragons, and then like all of them fight differently, and it's like really great and cool. It was just like a good, fun book to read. It's definitely the best action we've ever read.
Yeah, I think it is, and it's, like, really well described. I honestly felt like the action sequences read very similarly to the way that the action sequences are described in Brandon Sanderson's writing, where he's very, like his descriptions aren't flowery, but you really understand exactly what's happening in every single moment of a battle scene. What like every movement that character is making, it's not vague at all. And it's explaining exactly why the things that are happening in this way in these books. And you really need that in a dragon fight because you're like in a three-dimensional space, you're in the air. And the way that it's described, they have these breeches that they wear that keep the blood from like just pooling in their legs so that they don't black out as easily.
There's so many good descriptions in this book of just small things that add to the sense of
Yeah.
realism in the scene that are like great and fun. This book is so fun and good to read that honestly you should go read it before you listen to this podcast, because
Yeah.
we really do not do it justice.
There's no way we could possibly do it justice, especially if you really want an intricate world that really gets into how dragons are raised in a way that's really loving, because they obviously really love their dragons and they really understand them. And it feels really good to read it.
Do you think that the domestic scenes cut down on the pacing and sometimes drag down the story, but they are delightful? So if there's like two books in here for different, like if you want a very good description of a year in the life of the dragon husbandry, this book has that.
Yeah.
If you want dragon fights and siege warfare and wizards or necromancers. This book has that too, but not at the same time, so it's a little bit like
Yeah.
a little disjointed, but like both parts of the book are good.
There's a little something for everybody in this book. Yeah.
As long as you like two things, and those things are dragon husbandry and or dragon fights.
Yeah. Who doesn't like, come on, you gotta like one of those. If you don't like one of those, what are you even doing?
Yeah, the two genders, dragon husbandry and dragon fighting. Pick how you identify. There's a lot of things we could talk about this book. I from like a capital L literature's perspective, I don't think there was a ton there, but it is just like such a competently written book
Yeah.
with a great understanding of pacing and for. And there's also a lot there which we
Yeah.
kind of haven't talked about. There's a lot of religious stuff in it that are like very interesting, like two very different worldviews, absolutist, monotheistic, to like a sort of more open-ended, nature-focused one that's more about cycles and truth than it is about anything else. And I just think that those descriptions and even that philosophical argument that mostly in the second half of the book is really interesting, and the descriptions of it are like very beautiful. We just don't talk about it very much because it's just sort of like, yeah, nature and cycles and stuff.
My feeling about the religion as a theme in this book was that it seemed like it was really setting up for it to be a larger theme in a later book. But I feel like everything in this book was like everything in moderation. Like you can't let one thing or one belief system guide you. And that was kind of what the old religion was really teaching, where the new religion was like everything comes through Corazon.
It is an interesting part of the book. We don't talk about it, but I think definitely something. I don't know if it was like it seemed a little binary to me, but I think that's like fine for the space it had in the book.
I wonder if it's expanded up, if it's like setting it up to be expanded upon in a later book, because they talk about the cultural differences in the way they practice religion, even between the Aries. And Maya's like, oh, it's interesting that the Aerie uses kites and they like hang kites from graves as well, which is something that she learns. So I'm kind of wondering, because this entire book also takes place within the valley of her birth. Like she never leaves it really, other than going into that river town. They're in one place. It's not like a adventure book in the sense that they're traveling across the globe, which is like what most of the books we've read are.
Yeah, it's funny. The call to action happens at her home essentially, or like I guess like 15 minutes dragon flight from her house, and then she like goes back. And then actually the end of the book is when she leaves and sort of starts her hero's journey.
And the call to action is a means for her to be able to stay, and the fact that she is successful in her call to action allows her to stay in one place, which is kind of rare. Yeah.
I liked that. I think fantasy can get too big.
Yeah, you're right. Fantasy can get too big. Aragon is an example of that.
Yeah. Yes, the fantasy can get too big, so I liked that they kept it kind of small. It also helped with the fight scenes because you kind
Mhm.
of already knew where you were. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it was great. It hits harder when it gets destroyed because it's her home.
It's her home and you're like, "Oh my god." And it's been her family's home forever. Like, they were there before the empire came through and they survived that. That and now she's watching the destruction of, like, her heritage really is what it is. Like, when she leaves, she says to Tom like, "The area is about the community. It's not about what they can do for us, it's what we can do for them." Like, the village that lives below them. And she's like, "You've never understood that. You've always just been trying to, like, basically monetize and see how much you can get from the area and the village below you." That if when you exist in a community, that's not really how that works. But that's definitely the way that the empire functions. It's more of like a capitalist empire rather than like a more communal way of living that they had before. That was still like something that obviously her father believed. And like, what parting words to say to your older brother.
Do you want to talk about the dragons real quick before we wrap up?
Yeah, so in this book, it's all about the dragons, really. So we have a ton of dragon husbandry. We learn literally every aspect of their life cycle. So we have both wild and domesticated dragons. They do interbreed with each other. They're not too separate, like so separate that they are unable to breed. It also seems like the dragons that come from different regions look extremely different. So when the dragons come from the dragonry, Darian's like, that dragon must be from this area, and that dragon must be from this area. And I don't recognize where that dragon is from because it looks so different. And that one looks more like Shuja, and Shuja came from an outside area. So there is like a lot of difference in the breeds and a lot of hybridization to try to like breed the best, most powerful stock.
There's also, they talk about Malik and Kier being gray and silver because they're from the mountains. So it's pretty clear that like dragons in different areas blend in with their surroundings.
Yeah, so, like, her father's dragon is all black with golden eyes, Kier is silver and brown, and then Aru, who is I think Shuja and Gross's child like, baby is, like, gray and black or something, or gray and or tan and black. So we have a really large range of dragon coloration. I think the torchbearer dragons, the ones that can breathe fire, are orange and red.
She looked at them and she's like, wow, they're fire colored. I wonder if they can breathe fire. And then it's like, yep.
Yeah, and then we have the Avar, who are the aspects who aren't necessarily dragons, but appear like dragons, and they also have all these nature aspects. The summer dragon is green, and he has like
Antlers.
no, I think. Oh yeah, he has antlers, and then the autumn dragon, her horns look like trees, and she has like oak leaf wings, like they're like lobed in the way that oak leaves are lobed. The winter dragon is kind of insubstantial and like misty looking. I don't really remember what the spring dragon was described as. So they all have these nature aspects to them as well, which is kind of a beautiful piece of imagery.
We talked the dragon language, but I thought it was so cool. Dragons are always flying cave dwellers, but this is the first book we've ever had where they can do echolocation because that makes a lot of sense. Like, how
Yeah.
else would they see in those dark caves?
Yeah, and so we have dragon books where the dragons can speak just regular human words to anybody, which is like His Majesty's Dragon, Blue Moon Rising are both like that. We have dragon books where they can speak in your mind, which is Dragonflight and Aragon are both like that. Oh, I guess in Earthsea, the dragon can also just speak to anyone too.
He also speaks magic.
But then we have books where they can't speak at all, like in The Dragon Prince. They have no language because they're animals. And this is the first one where they have their distinctive dragon language and shows how inhuman they are. Like, not inhuman and like, I really love when a book is able to do that well.
Being able to communicate in 3D space.
Three-dimensional space, so cool.
It's like, anyway, here's the dimensions of this room. Click, 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 click. And they're like, ah, yes.
Yeah, and then communicate it to each other is, like, just incredible, and I think that speaks to that beauty of, like, different languages allowing us to think in different ways.
It also makes sense with the fact that these dragons are highly social animals in the
Mhm.
same way humans are highly social animals, and they bond similarly to humans.
Yeah. I think another strength in this book with the dragons is it shows how absolutely vicious and terrifying and dangerous they can be without even realizing it. Like the first scene in the book where Jem's dragon just slashes his tail and it almost kills Fren just from that movement. And that dragons are really these dangerous creatures. They are predators. They're an apex predator, but they also are extremely gentle. Like in the climax, when they're trying to move the dragon eggs, one of the dragons is picking up the eggs in her teeth and handing it to the soldiers to carry it down. So they just have this intense ability to be so, so delicate, which is how like a bear or like a big cat have that ability to be so gentle and so vicious with like the snap of your fingers without even realizing that they are being really dangerous in that moment to a smaller being. And it portrays that so, so well with these dragons and how they have to be really careful around them and how they have to approach them in a certain way and how they have to really make sure that they're in control of them. And then the bonding, the whole magic around the bond marks, how that helps when the person who's bonded to the dragon dies. Often they have to kill the dragon because it becomes so dangerous and uncontrollable that there's nothing they can do and they have to kill it. One of the things that her father says is like the only reason they were able to keep Gruss after her mother died, who was bonded to Gruss, the dragon, is because he was such a good dragon keeper and he's so good with dragons that he had the skill to be able to retame her and control her basically. And a lesser person or a person who wasn't as knowledgeable would not have been able to do that. And it's never portrayed in a way that you're like, I'm getting an info dump. It's always portrayed through like a scene. Now, some of those scenes I'm like, okay, I want to get back to the plot, but it's never portrayed as Maya just being like, this is how we do this, and this is how this works, and this is how this works. It's always through, all right, like now we're laying the dragon eggs, and this is what happens when we lay the dragon eggs. So it feels really much like a lived experience of these dragons, too.
Yeah, even when we're told something, it's because Maya figured it out on the scene through the context clues of what's going on.
Yeah, and she's like actively thinking through it until she figures it out. So it feels really earned when she figures it out. The way the dragons look is very classic dragon. Also, they have 4 legs, leathery wings, ear frills.
We didn't talk about it probably because there's so many illustrations of it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I wonder what the dragons look like. Look at the book.
Again, all of his illustrations for in this book are on his website, so you can go view them and they're really beautiful. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Great Dragons, great book.
Great book. Go read it, please. It's wonderful.
Yeah, we don't do it justice. I promise you, it's so fun.
Really go read it. It's a beautifully written book. And then tell Todd to write the second one because
Yeah, somebody. I mean, I never would pressure someone because
no.
writing a book is so hard. But
Yeah.
if Todd Lockwood is listening to this and is like, I don't know if I should work on this book, we think you should work on this book.
And I had never heard of this book before, and I just like heard it on like a list of books. Had you heard of this book before?
No, but you talked about it a lot because you were interested in the illustrations, which is sort of why we picked it.
Well, I'm interested in the way an illustrator approached writing a dragon world, and he did a great job.
So this has been The Summer Dragon by Todd Lockwood.
What are we reading next, JoJo?
We are going to read How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell.
Yeah, so do you want to explain why we picked this one?
I mean, we picked it partially because it's coming out soon as like a live action movie.
Yeah, so we picked this book for 2 reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 is because we found out that they're making the live action version of the animated version of How to Train Your Dragon. The book is very different from the animated version.
And also because Brandon Sanderson's new novel is coming out, so we can't read another 500-page dragon book. We have a different 1,200-page book to read.
Yeah, so we record these episodes a few months in advance, and as of this recording, the 5th book of the Stormlight Archive is coming out in like a week. It's literally a week from today is when it comes out. And I'm going to be reading that.
So that's all we have today. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button.
What are your thoughts on The Summer Dragon? Have you read it?
Hopefully.
Yeah, go read it if you haven't. And would you recommend this book to others? Please let us know what your thoughts are and what other dragon books you would like us to read. Bye, everybody.
Bye.